what is the relationship between consciousness and reality?
Um, so I think I need to say and very importantly that the word consciousness is a modern. It's a word. I don't know what its origin is, but it's definitely not a word that's used by the church fathers. It's not a word that is yeah, that is used in the Christian tradition so much. But
Yeah.
it's okay. It's an okay word. It's fine. Uh, the best way to understand it, in my opinion, is it has to do with attention,
Mm.
right? It has to do with what John Vervaeke calls relevance realization. And so the problem is, again, the problem of multiplicity. It's like, how do we background and foreground things? How do we know that they're relevant enough to see, and not just in terms of your eyes, but to like perceive? And then then we attend. And so attention is, you could say, the world is made of attention. Maybe a good way to understand that attention is one of the elements that coagulates multiplicities into identities. Um, and so maybe that's the best way to understand it. And so it's like the world could be cut up, and you can understand, like, on a purely quantified level, the world could be cut up in an indefinite amount of ways, but it's not. It's cut up in certain ways, and those have to do with what we attend to, has to do with what we care about. It has to do with what we're capable of being conscious of, you could say. And so that is, and so then the attention and the relevance, realizing what is relevant, so that I
Yeah.
can formulate categories, both propositionally, but also just in terms of grabbing things and engaging with things, and knowing that it's like, oh, I'm grabbing that's a hammer, like I'm going to use it to do this. I'm walking on something which is solid, and then I see there's water, and I don't walk on that. And so it's like, that's what I mean. It's like, it's not just an abstract mental thing, it's an actual realizing of what is relevant and what is meaningful, and in what way, as I engage with the world. And so that is where symbolism comes from. So the symbolism of water has very little to do with its physical characteristics in terms of what molecules constitute it, but it has everything to do with the fact that you drink water, you can drown in water, you bathe in water. Water comes from above, and then there's salt water below. It's like, this is what constitutes the symbolism of water. And if you
Yeah.
ignore that, and you think that water is just a bunch of molecules, you will die. It's as simple as that. You will die. You will die because you're not drinking it. You will die because you drown in it. Like, whatever it is, you're going to die if you don't live in the symbolic world. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the relationship, I think.
No, great answer. Great answer. The water analogy is great because it's also like you can't see things as just a bunch of uh I want to use the word things again. But I don't
Yeah, a bunch
walk
of
into
components, like a bunch of components that
yeah,
constitute something. Yeah,
yeah, and then
you just cannot. It doesn't. The world doesn't work that way.
yeah, and we don't experience it that way at
Yeah.
all. And the way we experience it, and I would say also the way, okay, well, maybe this is maybe another question I could ask you. So when somebody looks at a situation and they frame it differently, so I don't know where I heard it, but and I'm so careful these days to say there was a study that said this or there was a study that said that, but just bear with me. Apparently, there was a study where they went to Olympic athletes who had won bronze, silver, and gold medals, and they tried to figure out which one had the most regret. And you would maybe think the bronze medalist because they came in third place, but they've actually found it was the silver medalist because the silver medalist, the way they framed the situation is that they were so close to the goal. They were so close to being number one, but they didn't reach it. And the gold medalist is obviously just happy that they won, and the bronze medalist, he's just happy that he had a place on the podium, right? He's just happy that he
Yeah,
got to
for
be up
sure.
there at all. And so I'm curious, especially with the recent rise of stoicism, and I know John Vervaeke talks about this a lot in his when he talks about the meaning crisis, and stoicism is kind of one of these reemergences as a consequence of I hope I'm not misrepresenting what he said, but just off of the top of my head, Stoicism is kind of emerging, and this idea of, the way I perceive things can actually change the way I feel about things, which actually, as a consequence, changes the way I experience reality. And I think that's true. I think if you view water as a set of components making up something, and then you view it, as you've said, in the symbolic sense, that's obviously going to change the way you perceive things, and as a consequence, going to change the way you feel about the world and the way you experience reality. So our framing, our conceptual system, and reality, I don't think you can find a clear line between the two. Is that a fair thing to say?
No, I think you're right. I think you can't, especially if you understand the what I proposed at the outset, which is the inevitability of attention and relevance in the problem of how things exist. And so we're not talking about the material causes of things when we're talking about that. It's like we're not also denying them. We're not saying that it's all the magical worlds, of imagination. The world has, let's say, the world as we experience it has certain constituents, and those, it doesn't deny any of the scientific realities that people discover.
Yeah.
But it's contained within the symbolic world. It's necessarily because humans care for a definite amount of things, and in a hierarchy. And so it's like humans, how can I say this? A good way to explain it would be humans can care about NASA, taking pictures of deep space. They can care about that, but they better care about that less than they care about eating and sleeping, because you'll die again. Like, there's a hierarchy of care, and that hierarchy of care manifests itself constantly. And so the same would be like, even in terms of scientific research. So you can research things like that, for example, like what stars are made of, and humans can care about that. But if you do that and then you stop like doing research that is about what humans care about in the most immediate way, then you're going to break everything. Things are going to break, and people are going to revolt, And so it's like there's just a normal hierarchy of care that people ignore. It's just about getting back into your body and realizing the world you really live in, and realizing that, I can believe that the earth revolves around the sun, but it's more important that the sun comes up in the morning, because that organizes my day, and it organizes all of society. And people are, most people are awake during the day, and most people sleep at night. And that's basically the pattern of everybody, and everything that functions in the world. And so if you mock, if you say something like, it's an illusion, right? The sun coming up in the morning is an illusion. What's really true is that the earth, the earth is turning on itself, or that the earth rotates around the sun, or whatever. Like, the precession of the sun in the sky in terms of seasons, it's an illusion, right? All of this type of thinking, this is where people fall into nihilism, and where they don't realize the world they live in. They just don't realize that you can say that as much as you want, but you can't stop the fact that that the sun, coming up in the morning and going down at night, manages your world, everything about it. So